is the Page Publishing Book Club. Good evening. I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini, along with Rob Barrett, my engineer. Rob. I love you. The Four Aces coming at you with Love is a Many Splendid Thing right here on 710 WOR. I hope you're getting a lot of love on this Valentine's Day 2016. I will tell you this, my Page Publishing Book Club faithful. You're going to love our lineup of authors tonight. Wouldn't you love to get inside the head of an FBI guy? Well, Mark Johnston does it for you in his book entitled FBI and an Ordinary Guy, The Private Price of Public Service. Hey, Mark, you say you had the choice of becoming a clergyman, a crook, or a cop. Explain.
Well, where I grew up and the way I grew up, that appeared to be the fork in the road as to where you went, sort of all blue-collar kind of things. Many of the folks around me grew up and went into blue-collar and white-collar work, but some went into the clergy and some became outright crooks, bad guys, and others who I ultimately had a lot of respect for because you could be kind of like a crook and a bad guy and be a hero too, were the police officers that I met in my youth, under adverse circumstances, I might add.
Where did you grow up?
On Bloomfield Avenue in Montclair, New Jersey, in Orange, New Jersey, Newark, New Jersey.
So you ended up going into the FBI.
That's correct. The price that I paid was very private, but it was because of the public service. And I'll give you some examples. Not everybody is cut out for law enforcement. And of course, I learned the hard way that maybe I wasn't. Either too much baggage or too soft a psyche to really withstand some of the things that you face. But I had a man in New York, and that's where I spent a good portion of my career, was in New York and then later Atlantic City, but also Buffalo and Los Angeles and Washington. But in New York, I had a partner that I worked on a significant major organized crime drug enforcement task force case. And unfortunately, on something that was being worked on that night, a narcotics deal, in an undercover capacity, my partner was shot and killed. And that's not something that most people expect to happen on a job, and certainly isn't something that we even expect. But you have to be prepared for. And I'm not sure I was. And the reality hit me then, after about 10 years already in law enforcement, that there are really evil people, and there really is evil in the world. Even though I grew up being an altar boy, I still wanted to kind of hide in that comfort of reality of altar boy and that sort of thing. But that's when the reality hit me. And then it further hit me with 9/11. I went to New York City on the afternoon of 9/11. I volunteered to go up to work in an employee assistance capacity. And even though I volunteered, I'm not sure I was prepared for that either. And a lot of it ended up with depression and anxiety. And, of course, being a cop, that's not something that you discuss with others or certainly with mental health practitioners. And you kind of end up eating it yourself. But it becomes pretty corrosive inside. It really does. And that's what the book is about, not only to my family, because as I was traveling a lot in the Bureau in my earlier years, I was missing my wife, and I was watching my two kids grow up, but at a distance. So I started writing letters to them, explaining where I was and what I was doing and why it was so important, even though I was missing a portion of their lives. And I did this by writing letters that I never mailed to them, but I took back home and showed to my wife, and we put them away until they were old enough to show them. And when they finished college, I showed them the letters, and I started reading them and realized that there was a book there.
Nice.
And that's where we went.
What do you hope people gain from this?
Well, I hope that my brothers and sisters in public service, and I mean that in a general sense, because the insidious cumulative stress and compassion fatigue, et cetera, is in all public service, whether it's medical, first responder, fire, police, emergency first aid, that sort of thing. Teaching, certainly. I understand now that teaching in inner city is one of the most stressful careers that someone can have. But I hope that they'll learn a little bit that we can prepare for and be resilient to some of the pressures that are hidden in this line of work and the deleterious effect it has on our, not only on our physical health. Unless we're conscious of it and do something about it, year after year of the stresses of some of these occupations from caring people, obviously,
Right.
Can do a lot of damage. And I'm hoping that people in public service will realize that, and I'm hoping that both my children and the public at large will learn some of the private price that they'll never experience, that those that are in law enforcement especially do experience, and why they react the way they do sometimes. And I'm not condoning inappropriate behavior by any means, but I think that the public at large will have a better understanding of their guardians and maybe even of their military to some extent after they read a book like this.
All right, Mark. FBI and an ordinary guy. Have you ever heard of femtheism, Rob? Well, you have now. Sean Williams wrote The Last Man, and I mean, he means the last man. It's the final stage for the radicalization of feminism. Sean, this is crazy stuff. The global male population has to be reduced to 1/10 of what it is now. Men must be forced into seclusion far away from female society. 9 out of 10 newborns will be genetically altered so that the child grows up to be female. The femtheists are brutal, arrogant, well-trained, and well-equipped with 3 primary distinct leaders who, with all in time, come to be Ian, your protagonist, right? Ian's greatest adversaries. Where did you come up with this one?
This isn't a fairy tale. Femtheism is an actual group. It just so happens that one day I'm going along looking online and stuff, and then I come across a news article on this woman who calls herself Femtheist Divine, and she has all these radical ideas about how women are far superior to men, and her 3 tenets, of course, are basically what I base the book off of. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, this is so crazy. Why hasn't anyone taken this and run with it for like a book or a TV series or something along those lines? So I do look around to make sure no one's tried to do what I'm going to do, and from there I just start writing away.
Because you just found this online and you found it really interesting. So Ian is out to defeat femtheism, but then meets up with a woman who becomes his partner. Now, does she go along with all of this, or?
Yes. Not everyone in the book actually believes in these ideas or even wants it around. The relationship is rocky, and then times romantic, and then times really hateful.
I mean, it's all very interesting, but without men, it's kind of hard to make more women. You know what I'm saying? We need you guys around for something. You know what, though? People are so afraid of feminists. I mean, still to this day, women still get paid less than men. Women are still not strong. They're bitches. Not setting forth new ideas. They're complaining. You know what I mean? Like, we still get, such a short end of the stick that I think that's what feeds femtheists. It feeds women. Women get frustrated, and they kind of go in the complete opposite direction. But in your book, they actually take over and must be stopped.
Right. I take it as like a double-edged sword kind of thing. I mean, yes, I do basically patronize what mainstream feminist theories and ideologies that go on today. But if you look at the book, and I intended to be a trilogy,
okay.
The second protagonist, Mandy, she's actually basically what I would consider to be the true kind of feminist. Take no charge. I don't need any handouts. I don't need anyone's help. I'm a strong young woman. I can do everything by myself. I don't take any wool from anyone.
Well, I like that concept, Sean. Looking forward to the whole trilogy. Our next author, Dr. Christopher Kolker, is a medical doctor who's written a book entitled Christian Medicine, which I find very interesting because it leads me to believe that you believe, Dr. Kolker, that faith can literally heal.
It's the starting point. Yes, absolutely.
Tell me more about that.
And what I try to emphasize is that while we shouldn't have faith just so that we can heal, everything should permeate from there. That if we have that basis of faith, from there we start looking at other ways to heal ourselves, meaning we're going to take care of ourselves better. We're going to try different things to help with pain. We're going to exercise. We're going to treat our bodies right. We're going to treat our minds right. We may finally relax. We may practice forgiveness more often. We may do all these things which, in the end, will help us be as healthy as we can be, whatever situation that we're in. And that's where we can find better health, better healing, and better lives in the future. Starts, though, from the faith.
Do you still believe in traditional medicine?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
There's a role to play, but we see people all the time who are incompletely treated. They suffer from chronic pain. They suffer from chronic illnesses, heart disease, strokes. They know they're not going to get better, and they wonder, is there anything else? And the answer is yes, there is.
So how do you're dealing with a patient who's had a stroke or severely depressed. How does faith play a role in taking them somewhere where modern medicine hasn't been able to take them?
Right. If they ask me, and that's the key, we don't, I don't force anybody's, my faith on anybody, and that's a very important thing. We can't just generate faith for the sake of I want to get better. This is not like praying to Santa Claus. If I believe, then I'll be better. But if they decide indeed that they say there's got to be more than this, I'll tell them, yes, there is. And what I say is, if we start from a life of faith, then we look at actually 5 different aspects of everyone's life. We look at their spiritual life, to be sure. We look at their mental life. We look at their physical life. We look at their social life, and we look at their environmental life. We look at 5 different aspects of their life and how faith plays a role, sure, but also what can we do in each of these aspects of their life, given that we're starting from faith. What can we do in each of these aspects in order to truly have healing? What can we do? Nothing's going to be a magic silver bullet, and that's one of the things that we have to emphasize to people, is that there's no magic silver bullet. But if we do all of these things, make all of these changes on each of these levels, it's like a brick wall, one brick at a time, but we can start building up our health one brick at a time.
Yeah, I don't think people realize. I get so angry when I hear these commercials about losing weight. You don't have to exercise. It's like, yes, you do have to exercise. Yes, you do.
Absolutely.
I don't care what. I don't care how. Just walking every day, what that does for your heart, your lungs, like simple things that we can do. I notice in your write-up, you talk about forgiveness. I mean, I have a mother-in-law and sister-in-law at each other's throats right now. My mother-in-law's in her 70s. At some point, this hatred and this angst that they're creating over something really not that important is it could kill you.
Absolutely. And what I tell people is this, a lot of times I'll see people in chronic pain, and what they don't understand sometimes, because you can see it in other people and you can't see it in yourself, and that's true for everybody, even myself, is that if you're always angry, you're always going to be tense. That is going to take a role on your heart. That is going to even cause pain, musculoskeletal pain. And what I emphasize in forgiveness, look, forgiveness is not telling somebody that what you did to me was fine. Because after all, if someone shot your child, that's not okay. All that forgiveness has nothing to do with how you interact with the other person, or if you do interact with the other person. All forgiveness says is like, look, I've had something terrible happen, and maybe it was unjustified, and maybe it was mean what the other person did. But you know what? I'm going to learn to emotionally let go. Forgiveness is not dependent on what the other person says. It just simply is the act of emotionally, I'm going to learn to let go. For some people, it's one event. For some people, it's a long process. It has nothing to do with the other person. Forgiveness is something that you control, but it's emotionally letting go of that anger once and for all.
Yes, emotionally let it go. Come on, it's Valentine's Day. Forgive. And with that, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, jokes, and every joke you can imagine. Moving time for Noisy the Wabbit and political compassion. Can those 2 words be in the same sentence? Chew on that while we take this very important break. This is the Page Publishing Book Club.
Attention all authors. Page Publishing is looking for authors. Have you written a book and want to get it published? Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, Apple iTunes, and other outlets. They handle all aspects of the publishing process for you. Printing, cover art, publicity, copyright, and editing. Call 800-204-6099 now for your free author submission kit. That's 800-204-6099 for your free author submission kit.
Welcome back to the Page Publishing Book Club. I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini. Mohanad Hadid wrote a book called Political Compassion. And Mohanad, in reading your brief synopsis of your book, it appears you believe political oppression is the root of all evil.
Yes, definitely. And that is really, it exists in every human relationship. So, between parents and children, teacher, student, governor, citizen, employer, employee, in all human relationships, this form of oppression can exist. The relationship can also be compassionate, but it vacillates between oppression and compassion. And we have a lot of oppression worldwide in all these relationships.
Now, is this book based on a personal experience or just observation?
Well, I originally had been a very passionate student of political theory, where I delved into Plato a lot and Nietzsche a lot and Aristotle, and I read a lot of political theory. And then after I finished my master's degree, I've been observing all these issues throughout my life for the last 40 years. So it's both trying to observe what the principles of what I learned in college and how it applies into real life, in real relationship, including the acts of governments and what's happening in the world. Civilization has been built on the assumption that man is basically selfish, and our economic, political, and social institutions have been built on that assumption. And if you go in one direction or the other, it causes problems. So if you go into selfishness in our economic or political structures, it comes to a point upon maturity that it becomes oppressive. Same thing in socialism. If you are for the group, being compassionate towards the state and doing things for the sake of others rather than yourself, little by little it becomes mature and becomes oppressive. So my balance is really Aristotle's principle of the golden mean. It's an ethical principle, and it balances between selfishness and compassion, and should structure society, political, and economic institutions based on this balance.
What are the chances of that happening here in the U.S., do you think?
Not for the next 200 years.
So you're just hoping to put it out there?
Well, it's not something unreal or imaginary. I think civilization can go in that direction, and it will lead into social harmony and social justice, and we'll have a better civilization than what we had previously had.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing with me tonight. Have you ever heard a joke that really made you laugh and then you go to tell it and you forget it? Well, not Philip Howard. And the proof is in his book entitled, I've heard that one before. Philip, you must have some memory.
I have never written a joke in my life, but since I was young, I heard jokes, and for some crazy reason, I remember them. I've always said if you cut my head open when I die, if I leave my head to science, they slice it open, it's all they'll find is jokes.
So you wrote down all the jokes you remembered?
Yeah, well, it started out with a friend of mine asked me if I was telling jokes. He said, why don't you write me a few? I wrote him 40 or 50. And he said, hey, that's great. Why don't you write a joke book? I said, nah, not me. And he kept nagging and finally, yeah, okay, so I wrote a joke book.
So it's just one joke after another?
That's all it is. Jokes, 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 jokes. I left a lot out because they were really poor, and some out because I kind of forgot them. But since writing the book and having it published, I remembered a few more.
Do you have any favorites?
Yeah, a lot of favorites.
Okay, you want to tell me a couple of jokes?
Good. This guy finds a penguin, and he's walking down the middle of the road with the penguin following him. The policeman sees him and says, hey, what are you doing? He says, fighting this penguin. Yeah, but what are you walking down the middle of the street for? I figure I find this penguin. Somebody say, hey, I walk down the middle of the street. Somebody say, hey, that's my penguin. I give him back. No. You should take that penguin to the zoo right now. Okay. So stays walking down the street with the penguin. Cop sees him. Same situation. Why you do this? Oh, I find this. Didn't I tell you to take him to the zoo yesterday? Yeah, I take him. He likes it so much tomorrow I take him to the circus.
Okay, Philip.
I'd have to stop and think for a minute, because there's two kinds of jokes, clean and funny.
Yes.
And on radio interview, I don't believe I can tell some of the funny ones.
Well, you can. Let me decide.
Yeah, the Lone Ranger and Tonto.
Yeah.
They pull up in front of a saloon. It's hot. It's 98 degrees in the shade. There is no shade. Lone Ranger tells Tonto, I'm going to go in and have a couple of beers. I want you to stay out here and run around Silver, waving your arms. It'll create a breeze, make Silver a little more comfortable, and then keep some of the flies off. So I said, me too. And Ranger goes in, orders himself a beer. About the time another guy walks in and says, hey, anybody in here own a white stallion? And Ranger says, well, I do, stranger. Why'd you ask? Oh, nothing. I just want to let you know you left your engine running.
So what do you do? Like, what do you do with a book like this?
I've passed out 50 or 75 to friends and relatives.
Well, you know what I'm amazed. How old are you, Philip? Do you mind me asking?
Yeah, 77 and counting.
All right, 77. And the fact that you can remember, how many jokes are in this book?
Oh, I don't know, 300-400.
300 or 400 jokes. I can't remember one. People tell me jokes, and I laugh, and I think it's a great joke, and I'll say to myself, I got to remember that joke, and I never remember.
You're blessed.
I'm blessed? How come you can remember jokes? Do you have a special chip in your head?
I don't know what it is. I really don't.
You just can.
Got this couple driving back to Chicago from Milwaukee, and a policeman pulls them over. She's very hard of hearing. Policeman pulls up and he says, you know how fast you were going? She says, what do you say, Pop? He said, you know how fast you were going. The cop says, hey, let me see your driver's license. He said, what do you say, Pop? He said, let me see your driver's license. I showed him the driver's license. The cop says, hey, I see you're from Chicago. She says, what do you say, Pop? And I see you're from Chicago. Cop says, you know, the worst sex I had in my whole life was in Chicago. She says, what do you say, Pop? Said he thinks he knows you.
I like that one, Philip. I like that one. So is this it? One and done? You got any more books coming out?
I don't think so. I really don't.
You just wanted to do this.
I didn't really want to. It's just my buddy just kept bugging.
All right, blame him. Blame him.
It's his fault.
All right.
Now I'm a famous published author.
You are famous, Philip. You are famous. And you are a star on the Page Publishing Book Club. Finally, come meet Lucille Newman. She wrote an adorable children's book. It's called Moving Time for Noisy.
Yes, it is. And would you like me to tell you a little bit about it?
I would love for you to tell me a lot about it.
Okay. My book, Moving Time for Noisy, is about a rabbit. I used to live near a large empty lot, and I would walk along a sidewalk that bordered this huge empty lot. And invariably, numerous times, a tiny rabbit would hop out. And I thought it was very odd because usually when people go by, a wild rabbit will hop away. Only a domestic pet would not do that. But this didn't appear to be anyone's rabbit because there was no name tag on him. But it did have a string around his neck. And if you look in the book, you'll see what was on the string that would make noise. And that's why I named him Noisy. He evidently picked that up, got it around his neck somehow, from the debris in this empty lot. I took to being quite fond of this tiny little rabbit because he was so cute that I would bring a pan of lettuce leaves, some cabbage leaves, pieces of carrots, and he would eat some of it because I would notice it would disappear. Ultimately, something happened, a lot of action on that land, and Noisy's residence was in danger. He knew he had to move, find a new place. Moving is always very stressful. You never know new neighbors and friends you have to make, the new locale or where you're going. But his little residence, this tiny rabbit, was under siege. So there's bullying involved, punishment, rewards, and perseverance, because he was looking for someone. You look for somebody and you persevere until you can find someone you care about. And there's also an instance where Noisy saves a life of an animal larger than himself. I would say the age range is between 4 and 9 years of age. You can fall in love with this tiny little rabbit. So many exciting things that happen in the story, and it just began with this rabbit, tiny little cute rabbit, whose residence was about to be demolished.
Right.
And sometimes when you move, things can become better. They can become worse also, or just plain different. And in this case, I would say most people would call it a happy ending eventually. And I'm an artist as well. All my pictures are done with different artist media, and this was in full color. And so it's quite a beautiful book, and I hope people will really appreciate Moving Time for Noisy.
All right, Lucille. Are you feeling the love? Are you feeling the love? I know I am. From the authors who join us every week to our faithful Page Publishing Book Club listeners, and of course, my engineer, Rob Barrett. Am I right, Rob? We're gonna go home to get some hearts and candies, all right? I hope you get some too. We'll be back next week for another edition of the Page Publishing Book Club. Same time, same place, 710